I'll call this meeting to order. Agenda, first of all, on consideration and appointment of Joint Review Board's public member.
The city's public member has been Mr. Richard Binley.
Yep.
But you do need to make a motion to appoint him officially.
So
Okay.
moved. Second.
Second was, okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now we have to elect the chairperson. This is the one I can't be, or?
I think you
No, you were the chairperson, I think, last time. So
Okay.
typically it's the, the chief elected officer of
Okay.
the municipality, but it can be anyone.
I move you.
I'm thinking of the other one there, that,
Well, a motion
The
to,
planning?
you're the chair of that one.
yeah.
You are the chair of that one. Yeah.
I'll second that too.
Motion and a second to nominate Mayor Spearings as chair.
Motion made, seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we have to discuss the responsibilities of the Joint Review Board.
Sure, I can talk about that real quick. So, good evening, everyone. I'm John Cambron with Ellers. So the responsibilities of the Joint Review Board, for many of you, this will be kind of a broken record from the last time, but really, the Joint Review Board is a five-person board with one representative from the school district, the technical college, the county, one representative chosen by the city, and then your public member. And essentially, the responsibility is to review the project plan, to ensure that it adheres to the statutory requirements, and then it's a straight up and down majority vote by the board. So that's really the responsibilities of the JRB.
Anybody got any questions? Nope. All right, now we have to discuss and review the project plan.
Okay, does everyone have a copy of the project plan? Anybody need one?
We do have copies on the table here, two extra
Yeah.
copies if needed. So.
Okay. If you go to page 4, so what I'll do is I'll just kind of give the Cliff Notes version of the project plan, so I'll really kind of focus on the executive summary. So what we're talking about is the creation of TID number 7. It's proposed to be created as a mixed-use district. So under state statute, there are different types of tax incremental financing districts depending on the type of development and the land uses that are being proposed. So a mixed-use development is suitable for a mixture of development. You have commercial, industrial, and residential. So really, as you look at the boundaries of it, the reason that we go kind of beyond the one major parcel where all the action is really to adhere to the statutory requirement and bring in a residential parcel so that we have a mixture of both commercial and residential, but essentially the residential parcel doesn't serve any other function other than to adhere to the statutory requirements of the mixed-use district. Really, the purpose of it is to serve the larger parcel and the infrastructure that's needed to serve that parcel. So really, with that being said, what we're looking at within this project plan, keeping in mind that this really, at this point is a planning estimate, and that the costs in here are estimates, is the need for about $809,000 of infrastructure to ultimately serve that parcel, and that would be done in two different phases. Really, the bulk of the infrastructure would be needed to go beyond the immediate development that's happening with the convenience store, and really go after kind of attracting a larger type development. Realistically, what I think is being talked about is the potential for a hotel type development.
Right.
And with the location being what it is, right off of Highway 10, I think that's really a suitable spot for that type of development. So the infrastructure needs that we're talking about really go into that second phase as the hotel would be needed. So it's kind of, as development occurs or as the need is there, that's when the infrastructure would go into place. So what we've done is put together some rough estimates as to when that potentially could occur, but the TID offers the flexibility for it to occur as it's warranted. So within the plan with the mixed-use development, you have 15 years from the adoption of the authorizing resolution, which is the resolution that would be adopted not later tonight by the Plan Commission, but by the Common Council later in September here. So you have 15 years, the city has 15 years to actually make construction expenses and do the necessary infrastructure. But you can continue to pay if you have to debt finance it. You can continue to pay that debt beyond all the way up to the 20th year of the district. What we're looking at in terms of potential economic development is approximately $3.9 million of development, which is a fair amount of development to occur on that piece of land. And most of that would be tied up with the hotel development. And really, within the calculations, that $3.9 million is kind of a solved-in number. Essentially, as we looked at the infrastructure needs that were put forth by the city's engineer, that's really realistically the amount of development that's needed to be able to cash flow about $809,000 worth of infrastructure improvements. So with that being said, if, say, a hotel were to come to fruition, or another type of development for that matter, and it were to be valued less than that, either not as much infrastructure, I think the hope would be you might be able to get away with not as much infrastructure to get to the development, or conversely, what would have to happen is that the developer would have to share in the responsibilities of the infrastructure needs. It's just not enough value to be able to support $809,000 of infrastructure. So if you remember back from the last TID and just in general, the way that it works essentially is the benefit of the TID is you get to use the taxing authorities of all jurisdictions to help repay infrastructure and other costs within the district. So as that development occurs, then the value goes up. You use those costs to help the tax revenues to help pay back the infrastructure costs. So just to kind of fast forward here, kind of jump around. If you look at page 8, which many of you have here, you can see what we're talking about in terms of the district boundaries. I think everyone kind of knows where this parcel is. The Subway, the pizza place, that parcel. So that is all one parcel. And then like we said, we're going across the street to pull on a residential parcel, really to adhere to the state statutes. If you look at page 10, you can see the base value of the total properties in question. The estimated equalized base value of the two properties is $533,000. Most of that is the larger parcel where the subway is. If you look at page 11, we've got the equalized value test, and the way that this works within the statute is you have the total value of the municipality, and you're allowed to have, it's a 12% test. So the way it works is you have the total increment of your existing tax incremental districts plus the base value cannot exceed more than 12% of your total equalized value. Now, the city has created, potentially have created two TIDs this year, TID 6 and TID 7. The way it works when a TID is created, when two TIDs are created in the same year, is the test is actually done independent of each other, which is why you don't see TID 6 here, because it's occurred in 2015. So that's the way it works within the equalized value test. But with that being said, you look at the two together after this year, and you'll be right up to that 12%. And as value starts to occur, you'll be over. So you'll really, this is potentially, limit you for a while in terms of development. But this is really, between this and the Agri-Pure site, this is really where the action is. So it's where you'd want to utilize
It's not
here.
already in TID, yeah.
Right, yep. Jumping ahead just to the spreadsheets here, the rest of it just kind of gives you an idea of the types of costs that can be utilized with tax incremental financing dollars. If you go to page 18, this shows you the estimated project list. And really, phase one is kind of what we're talking about initially here. And really the only infrastructure, hard infrastructure type piece would be sidewalk improvements along West Main Street. That second phase really would be as that additional development occurs. That's really where you start talking about most of the infrastructure costs and most of the costs within the TID. But really, we're showing that in a range years 2 to 5, but that's really going to be determined by the pace of development within the district. So I don't know,
Just a
Patrick.
quick note too, yeah, on these projects here, the sidewalk improvements, when the state redid Highway 110, they only went so far with sidewalk, so it ends about a house and a half short of the Lake Shore Drive intersection. So the intent would be, with the TID, we would complete that sidewalk. Right now, with the convenience store going up, we did get into a developer's agreement with the owner of the parcel, Weyauwega Co-op Services. None of the TID that we're considering now is going to help fund any of the costs that the developer wouldn't already have to pay. And so we, in our city ordinance, anybody that asks to extend water and sewer has to pay for that 100%. And so right now what's happening is we're extending the water and sewer roughly 200 feet to the west, and Weyauwega Co-op Service has paid 100% of that cost. And then we were also able to get an agreement with them where when we widen the road and widen the intersection, they're paying 1/3 of that cost and the city is picking up 2/3. So when we look then, not to skip down here, but when we skip down to item number 6, roadway costs, the note there means the 1/3 that the developer is paying is not included in this at all.
Correct.
And so what this is gonna help do is it's gonna help cover the city's portion to fund it now. And basically with the road and the water and sewer, we're extending it just far enough to service the convenience store. So with the sewer, we're right at the edge of allowing a gravity sewer to work through there. So if there would be any future development on the rest of the 6.5 acres, we'd be looking at probably a lift station to have to put in there. And a lot of those costs, really what we're hoping to do is to capture the value of the convenience store now and anything in the future that can help us finish the road, finish the water, the sewer, sidewalk as well, and then also look into business advertising for businesses that will be located there then. So,
If you look ahead at page 21, then you kind of see how this would potentially be financed. What I would say with these initial costs in 15, we've got it structured for a potential bank note. There's a good chance that may not, you may just cash finance the improvements. Particularly when you start talking about the advertising and that type of stuff, who knows if that's gonna come to fruition or not. But really, I think, what we'll want to focus a little bit more on is 2017 with the, which is just again, a chosen year. The issuance of a general obligation bond for $715,705 in project costs. You can see the estimated financing expenses that go along with that. So the total debt issuance within the TID would be $790,000. So a total between the two of $883,300. From a planning standpoint. So when we look then at the next page, page 22, development assumptions, we've got $400,000 coming in 2015, really with the convenience store, the estimated value of the convenience store, and then the bulk of it in 2017 with the hotel development. And like I said, that's that $3.5 million right now is a solved number. When we look at the tax increment projection, with the existing tax rate, we look at total tax increment, the total future value of the increment of $1.7 million. If you look at that kind of on a tax exempt basis, In terms of what it would be able to support, you're looking at a little over $1.2 million of project costs that would kind of roughly be able to support it in terms of net present value, in terms of looking at the tax increment and in terms of net present value. Taking that then to the final step, looking at the cash flow projection within the TID. We have total projected revenues on the left-hand side, expenses in the middle, and then the cash balance on the far right-hand side. And if you remember from the last time that we did this, the big item to kind of focus on across the page is your cumulative cash balance. You can have negative cash balances in any one given year, but realistically, the cumulative balance of the TID is what you don't really want to go negative. So as we kind of walk through across the page, you see your total bond revenues coming in 2015 and then in 2017. And even though you have, say, $400,000 that would a value that would be booked as of 2015, you're not going to start to see any tax increment revenue coming in until 2017. And then really, if a hotel would happen in 2017, you're not going to start seeing that tax increment coming into the picture really until 2019. So there's always that kind of 2-year lag from when the development occurs to when it actually hits the books. So you see your total revenues coming in from tax increment revenues. We are with this general obligation bond, what we're looking at, and again, this is a planning estimate, is capitalizing the first 2 years of interest on it. That's not uncommon with tax incremental finance districts because, again, there's that 2-year lag between when the development occurs and when you have your increments start flowing. So essentially what we're saying is you're borrowing for 2 years worth of interest payments. So it's not something you'd like to do, but in a lot of cases it's what's necessary to be able to cash, be able to pay the debt service on the debt. So we see our two debt service payments for the banknote and the GO bond, construction expenses thereon after, and then administrative expenses coming into the fold. And you can see your total expenses on the far right side of the blue column, the last blue column, and then balances, so total revenues less total expenses. So really what we're showing is that the district would be projected to close out in the year 2031. So that would be the point in time that the cumulative balance of the TID is greater than the debt that's outstanding, so you'll be able to call the debt and pay it off. Any questions on that? It was kind of a fast run through, but it should look somewhat familiar to what you've seen, with TID 6. Okay, that's all I had on the project plan.
Okay. Set the next date. Do we have a motion to approve this, or?
This is more of an organizational
It is,
meeting, this
yep.
one is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody got any questions? You guys back there? Nobody?
I would.
Go ahead, Jim.
How many TIDs are allowed in Weyauwega?
You can have as many TIDs as is allowable under that 12% rule. So really that 12% rule that I explained earlier with the equalized value test, that's the limiting factor. So it's not the number of TIDs, it's the amount of value. So what you're looking at is within the TIDs that would be created, the increment of all the existing TIDs plus the base value of any new TID can't be greater than 12% of your total equalized value. So that's really the limiting factor with the number of TIDs that are allowed.
So
Anybody else?
which ones are still open? Three just closed.
Yeah, we just closed number 3, which was basically Larson Co-op CHS and a lot of the Industrial Park West.
Mhm.
Number 4 is open, and number 4 was an overlay TID, which was basically TID 3, except it carved out the co-op Larson CHS, but then it added in the residential subdivision that's up there, apartments, Mill Pond Circle. That's number 4. Number 5 is the cap services development on the southeast side of town. It's that, basically everything east of Lincoln Street, south of Alfred, on the east side of the fairgrounds.
Okay.
Number 6 is Agri-Pier that we had just created, and then number 7 would be this property along Highway 10 on the southwest.
So 6 and 7 are the 2 new ones
Yes.
being created this year.
Yep.
Okay.
So we would have 4 then that would be open and active if this is created. Ideally, we would have probably created this one a few years ago before the subway was built. The reason we're here in September looking at this is, again, none of this is going to be funding the convenience store development. It's just an effort to capture. They've said that they'd like to be selling gas before the snow flies, and if that's the case, that means that all of their value is going to be created this year. And if we would wait till next year, then we miss $400,000 worth of new value. So.
Go ahead, Jim.
Apparently, the bulk of what we're talking about is for a hotel to be built in that area. Is there a commitment for a hotel to be built in that area?
There is not. It's zoned highway business right now. There are 6 to 6.5 acres open for retail development. We don't have anything in hand on a hotel, but we are actively seeking and having conversations with potential developers with hotels.
So we're going after them, or they've approached us?
We're going after them.
Okay.
So are you looking at one like maybe the size of the Cobblestone in Clintonville?
It's exactly the size and
Okay.
name that we're talking with.
It's kind of
There's a couple others too. Yeah.
It's kind of unusual with Cobblestone, doing so many small towns, north of South Dakota, western Minnesota, and their home offices right now, but jumped right over us.
Yeah, because I think that one's in the TID in Clintonville too.
They're in Clintonville, they just built that one in
I
Clintonville.
believe you're right.
What
Right.
happens if this development doesn't come to fruition and we've created this?
Yeah,
Creating a TID doesn't commit you to putting in, spending any dollars. So it doesn't commit the city to actually doing any of the infrastructure improvements, where what it does allow you to do is capture that value and help pay back those infrastructure costs if the development does occur. So if nothing happens and it sits dormant, and another opportunity pops up within the city where you're kind of held to that 12% limit, there's nothing to say you couldn't in some future year close TID 7 and move on if just nothing's occurring, or if the infrastructure needs just aren't there.
Okay.
So it's not, creating a TID doesn't obligate the city to doing any of the improvements that are proposed here that are talked about.
it sort of goes both ways, because any new development is going to require all of these infrastructure improvements. But without the new development, we don't need almost all of the infrastructure improvements. I mean, we need them, but it's not as pressing there.
Yeah.
So the simple answer would be, if that doesn't develop, basically we're paving the road and putting in water and sewer right now that's just good enough for what's there now.
And is that the extent of the road work that's going to be done, is what's being
300
done
feet.
now?
It's roughly 700, 800 feet to get down to the hitching post. And right now we're reconstructing 300 feet. So it's to where actually they've poured the curb. Right where the curb ends, it's going to dump into the ditch work that's out there. And that's the extent of how far the road's gonna be widened.
And the city, the town came to an agreement that the city will pay all these expenses, is that
Well,
correct?
in reviewing the history of the annexation, that cost share had never come up in the past. Now, it would be very nice if it did, but knowing that there was development that was coming, I can tell you that we had asked the town if they would be interested in participating in the costs.
I can expect to know what their answer was, that's
Yes.
understandable.
Yeah, but one of the things that's out there is they've been plowing that section, because it used to be just the town road, now it's city on the south, most of the town on the north, and we do have to get into an agreement with them probably this fall, if not for responsibility on extending the road, at least on maintenance. So that's a discussion we're going to be having because we need to have it.
Has any consideration been given to widening the Main Street or Highway 110 to allow for traffic to go through?
I think
That was asked,
what you
yeah.
mean is where,
Well, it's gonna bottleneck.
yeah, basically, the 110, they've said, no, they got the island out there, and nobody can come through that. The engineers have decided that the best route they can do without having a serious problem with the state who owns the highway or federal is what's done now.
Well, the only reason I've driven through there several times, and if you have, in effect, a semi trying to make a turn, a left-hand turn coming into town, and then you have a vehicle on the new part where you're at, that vehicle's pretty much gonna have to pass before that semi can make that turn. So everything that's behind the semi is gonna have to come to a stop. And I was kind of thinking maybe there'd be consideration given to making it wider on the right-hand side so there's a passing lane. I don't know if that.
It hasn't been pursued with the state, but it was brought up when we were, when we considered the development agreement and started awarding the construction basically. They had asked, okay, you're gonna widen the intersection basically to accommodate 3 lanes. At the intersection on Lakeshore Drive, the question was, well, but Main Street is still 1 lane each way. So the same situation you're bringing up. When we talked to Cedar Corp, they had mentioned that we should probably be talking to the state too about the potential to widen that out if we needed to, or if we had to.
Yeah, well, and the way that the utilities are laid out, it looks like it could be done without a great deal of, and I just think it's something that should be considered, and maybe it's an expense that should be involved here if that's what's going to happen. Or, I don't know.
Yeah, it would for sure be a cost share with the state though. And what's interesting there is that it's a state road, it's a county road, and it's a city road, Main Street is. So by default, we would probably have a cost sharing built in there.
Okay.
But we are able to account for some of that in the TID if we needed to, and if we're not able to, we can amend the TID too if it comes to
Right.
that.
You do have the ability to amend the TID during its lifespan to add projects that aren't listed in the project plan. You'd like not to have to do that if you don't have to, because it's the same process as what we're going through now.
Yeah.
But it's definitely doable.
Anybody else? Set the next meeting date and make a motion to adjourn.
Sure. So, currently this is scheduled to be heard before the council on September 21st. So that would be the date that the resolution would be adopted. So we're looking at kind of a 30-day window after that point in time. So, if you have your calendars handy, if we want to stay with, with a Tuesday, we could look at the following week, September 29th as a date, or the 8th of October as another one.
Anybody got a preference? What date? What do you got?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong month. It's
October
September 29th.
October
or
6th.
October 6th.
Can we go to the 13th yet too? If 30 days from the 21st, if we needed to?
Sure.
Or are you?
Yep.
Are you up against it at all with that, or okay?
Or, you could look at another day too, of Tuesday, if you want to go beyond Tuesday. But if the 29th works, that works for me.
That work for you? 29th?
Yes. Next morning I'm on a plane, I think, so.
Oh.
That should be good. That should be good.
Everybody good with 29th?
That's a Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yep.
Tuesday?
At 5:30? Okay,
Tuesday, the 29th at 5:30 PM.
great.
Okay, make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made, seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you, gentlemen.